Now, as earlier mentioned, the health sector has been faced with issues like out-of-school children, the lack of access to basic education, strike, security, and so on. And these issues must be tackled if the system is to meet global standards. It is in light of this that the Tinubu-led administration has made its commitment to increase the budgetary allocation to 25%. This was disclosed at the annual education conference in Abuja, the Federal Capital Territory. Now, this is the highest so far. Before now, the President, Muhammad Buhari's 2023 allocation of 1.7 trillion, representing 8.2% of the total 21.8 trillion, was the highest that has been made to the sector since 2015. Well, we'll get into it shortly, but first of all, let's take a look at this package. We'll be right back.
It was a gathering of education stakeholders and development partners from across the country. The aim was to brainstorm on possible ways to improve and harness quality education in Nigeria. The Minister of Education, while declaring the conference open, says that Nigeria will continue to strive to achieve targets set by the Sustainable Development Goals for 2030 and the African Union Agenda for 2060.
We have a lot of good policies on the ground, a lot of pious declarations as to what we are supposed to be doing. We can spend the whole day making declarations left and center, but if it is not on ground, Nigerians will judge us well. And this is where I can tell you we intend to come in. We want to bridge that gap between the policy statements and the actualization.
The minister, while highlighting government's plans to focus on technical and vocational education, says its plan of action to implement this in primary, secondary and tertiary institutions will soon be made known to the public.
Sooner, we are going to lay out the policy direction of this government in practical terms, what we must achieve. And as I said at the beginning, we are going to start from the beginning, from the foundation institutions, basic schools, to secondary school, and then the tertiary education. Giving significant focus on institutions that provide technical and vocational qualifications.
Development partners present called for increased budgeting for education and the judicious utilization of the funds allocated to the sector. They also called for the training of teaching personnel to improve the nation's teaching workforce.
And I'm just going to make 3 small suggestions about areas that could be focused on. Firstly, increasing the overall funding allocated to education, and particularly basic education, and ensuring that the money is spent well and spent in full, improving the recruitment, training, and effective and equitable deployment of teachers.
There are only a small number of the countries that are implementing education reform at the level of Nigeria, for sure. However, we are still away from achieving the SDG 4 goal. We need to review what works and what doesn't work.
The minister has called for actionable recommendations from stakeholders with timelines to help develop a template that can define a strategic roadmap for the nation's education sector.
Well, that was a package by our correspondent Bernard Akede talking about the reform of the education sector. Let's get into our conversation for today, but of course not without my guest. Joining our gathering today, we have Mary Lotachukwu Ohagwasi, the CEO, Gemstone Children Academy, Ghajiga, Lagos. Thank you, Mary, for joining us.
It's a pleasure having me.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. We also have Gideon Simon Ghajiga, the Deputy Director, Center for Distance Learning, Federal University, Wukari. Thank you, Gideon, for joining us.
It's my pleasure joining you at this time.
It's a pleasure to have you, ladies and gentlemen. Before now, Mary, several government budgetary allocations have fallen short of the 26% recommendation by the UNESCO. And if we were to say that it was justified, can we now say that, let's say it was justified based on lack of resources at the time, can we now say that we have enough resources for the education sector? What do you think? What's your thought on that? Why now? Why is the change taking place now?
I would like to say that it shows priority. Before now, we didn't have more resources, less resources than we have now. Rather, we can even say we have less resources now. But it remains to be challenged that education remains a critical sector for any economy. Any economy that does not budget for education in long term will never strive. In climes where things are working, education plays a vital role. So what we are seeing now is a welcoming development. Budgeting 25% of our annual, a budget on education shows the place of education in this current administration. And we are likely going to see light at the end of the tunnel with the way things are going. I like their body language, and it's going to, it's going to show a lot of changes going forward. So we're crossing our fingers and watching out to see how it's going to play out. One thing is to have policy, one thing is to actualize it and having a positive outcome. So we're very positive with this development. We're going to, put education where it belongs in the scheme of things in our national development.
Hopefully so. Thank you for that, Mary. Gideon, do you agree with Mary when we say that the sector has not been prioritized before now?
Yes, I agree, because successive administration has always downplayed the importance of education through the annual budgetary allocation, which fell short of the United Nations standard. So the current regime deciding to increase the budgetary allocation to 12% is a welcome development. It's one thing to make a policy pronouncement. It's another thing to implement it to the letter. More often than not, government policies are made with good intentions, but when it comes to implementation, it's always faulty, because the mechanism for implementation has always been faulty. The authorities, the government authorities should ensure that monetary allocation for education are judiciously channeled through accountable channels, so that those stakeholders in the education, those who are going to implement these policies, should be held accountable. Because education is a very vital tool for education. Russia, China came behind America. Today, they are all great nations because they invested a lot in education. So I think I agree with Sister Mary.
All right, very well. Mary, I'm still going to come back to you, because you mentioned very brilliantly that it's not just by implementing policies. We have to have active plans to make sure that these policies are executed as well. I would also like for us to talk about the aspect of accountability. Now, we know that is one aspect that Nigeria has suffered for a long time, talking about not carrying people along, people not knowing what happens. We just hear the news and then we don't see the follow-ups. So in terms of gatekeeping now, how can we ensure accountability that every penny allocated to that sector, speaking of education now, will be used judiciously for that purpose, unlike it used to be before? Do you think that we have credible gatekeepers to ensure that that happens?
I think we have, depending on priority. If the current government, through his minister, could come up with regulation, stringent regulation, and supervisory boards to, oversee this amount of money that will be allocated to education. And then some people call to books, because in the past we see where autonomy are given to organizations and tertiary organizations, and see people, abusing it. So if government could go to the letter to ensure this is done, I think posterity will celebrate this present administration. Because this is one area that we have been in our former administrations. So if they could invest this much, because where you invest, that is where your heart should be. And that is where your eyes should be. So if we're going to invest this much, let's supervise, because whatever you don't supervise, don't expect. So when we invest this much, we should you should supervise to see that the money is judiciously used. And we're seeing positive outcomes, and the rest will be history. Because if we don't do that, sincerely, it will still be the same story. So I believe this government meant well, and if they follow it up with what I'm seeing with their current statements, there's going to be hope for Nigeria.
All right. Gideon, still talking about policy implementation now. We have agreed unanimously that it's not just by budgetary allocation. Some plans need to be put in place to ensure the drastic revival of the education sector. In that meeting at the Education Summit, according to Tahir Mamani, he said that they are putting 100% effort into making sure that these plans are implemented. In your own understanding, what would you suggest is the way forward? How would you suggest that these plans be actualized?
Well, these plans can be actualized by getting every stakeholder along the chain to be involved in its implementation. With each passage, with each stop, there should be an accountability mechanism. Technology can come in this instant to ensure that every penny budgeted for education is judicially utilized, with also constant feedback from the beneficiaries of these policies, and also of budgetary allocation. For instance, TED Fund was conceived as a viable.
I think we're having problems with Gideon's
to show
audio.
Politicians who are being appointed, means vice chancellors, provosts are being appointed based on political patronage, have made mess of this laudable policy. But we can go back to the drawing board, to the core objective.
All right, Gideon, your audio seems to be lagging rather. I think we're having issues with your audio, but while we wait for that to be rectified, I would like to introduce our third guest joining us to discuss the education reform in Nigeria. We have joining us Opara Gloria Chikodi, a lecturer in the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. Gloria, thank you for joining us. Do we have Gloria? All right, well, while we wait for Gloria to join us and, of course, for Gideon to rectify his audio, Mary, can you confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, do.
Brilliant. Now, Mary, one of the problems that I mentioned earlier that the education sector has been faced with over time is the issue of out-of-school children. Now, the president has mentioned that bringing back the out-of-school children is top on his list of what to do in the education sector. Now, but we know that bringing back these children will still not guarantee them a job after school. So what would we say is the point of bringing all these children back to school without guaranteeing them a job when they finish?
Before I came online, I was in an interview with another media house. I mentioned something. In Nigeria, you don't solve a problem the way it has been solved before now. If we could look at how do we change it. For instance, those children in this out-of-school children, some of them are in areas where you may not have even a single teacher in that vicinity. We can use an orthodox method to bring about solution. It's not about acquiring a modern education of having a certificate, but ensuring that you empower these out-of-school children to be able to solve their own personal problem, their families, and the societal problems. You have to tailor their education to their peculiarity. You don't give them what you give to children, maybe in the Southwest or in the Southeast. Look at how do we meet them? How do we solve their problems? Where do we get them? Who do we deploy to help those children? Now we have NYSC all over the place. From the camp, as they come for orientation, you can train them, empower them, pay them lucratively, and deploy them and see how the result comes in. Because they are with them in those communities. And then see how do we use cheap technology to as well reach them. How do we prepare them with skills that are entrepreneurial, vocational, that when they leave such training, they can be able to take care of themselves. They have peculiar problems in such areas. How do we bring solution through education? So education will not just be maths and English, but how can we use education to meet those people, bridge the gap, empower them, prepare them for life? To me, that is what education should mean in those areas we have out of school children, and then importantly, solve the problem of security. Because one of the reasons why those children are out of school is also security. And then orientate their parents the importance of education. Because some of them have this notion that Western education is an alien thing for them. So how do we keep through their emirs, through their mocks and all that, see how we can empower them? Use every channel. And some of them follow these nomadic routes. See how do we meet them where they are, not in the classroom. That's kind of education this set of people needs, not our orthodox education.
Right. Thank you very much for that, Mary. Before we proceed, I would like to confirm if Gideon is with us. Gideon, can you hear me? All right. I think we still don't have Gideon yet, but do we have Gloria with us?
Yes, of course.
All right, welcome on the show, Gloria. That's Opara Gloria Chikodi, the lecturer from the Federal Capital Territory in Abuja speaking. Thank you for joining us, Gloria.
Thank you.
All right. Now, Gloria, before you joined, we're talking about the issues facing the education sector, and we spotlighted them, speaking on insecurity, talking about out-of-school children, and even the issue of strike and all that. And still talking about these challenges, Mary just gave salient point on how to ensure that these children who were out of school and are being brought back will be guaranteed jobs after that. But it goes beyond that. There is also the issue of insecurity, especially in the northern part of Nigeria, where children are kidnapped and even killed very regularly. What do you think can be the solution to that? Because ensuring that people get education is not just enough. That won't suffice if we still do not have security in these schools.
Thank you for this question. We have a lot of them here in northern states. Out of school children, there are many of them here. I think in my education sector, I happen to work with FCT Education Department. I think there are so many things we try to put in place to get these children be educated. After the UBEC said involves every individual. Out of school children, the UBEC is talking about involving every human being to be literate. Literacy and numeracy, they have to get to know them. So there's no exception, there's no exemption of any child. It's disheartening that these children are not educated. Even when you take it to their doorsteps, they wouldn't want it. They would like to be begging. But whatever happens, there are some of these children, you can go to their doorsteps. You can arrange a place for them. Like in FCT, Mr. Jonathan, when he was the president of this nation, he built some schools in the northern states, Almajiri schools, where we get them, we put them, you feed them. You can use motivation. Let's talk about motivation now. Like that time, they are being fed, we bring food, we bring different items to attract them to come near to the school. At least many of them are hungry. So when you get all these food items, get clothing items, get a school, a convenient school, a school where they can read with convenience, not that type of school they will go under the tree to learn. All materials you get them, they will come. I believe these children will come. Their parents will release them, especially the girls. You know, in the northern states where we are, the girls, their parents will not want to release them to go out. They wouldn't want people to see their faces. But I think, thank God for education, so most of their parents now are educated and they are trying to release their young girls. I think with provision of motivation, encouragement, building good schools, towing the line of President Jonathan, I think we will get there. Again, there are some of our educationists, they will see, they will pick, like the director of Education Resource Center, there were some out of school children, she picked by herself to school. You will pay for them, they grow, they finish their secondary education, they enter the secondary school, they finish their secondary education, primary and tertiary. She has many of them. If some of our elites like that could do something like that, I think we will get there. Little by little, when they go home, they see their siblings educated. They will have that drive, that enthusiasm to follow suit. Again, when we open these schools, Nigerians, we have to, I don't know, we are not talking much about supervision. Supervision and monitoring, provision of the right curriculum. Most times, you see there is not the right curriculum for these children. They will give something that is higher than their class, and when they hear it in class, they will tend to run away. Let's get the right curriculum for these children at their level. Give them the right curriculum at their level. We'll talk more on this. Thank you.
Like for touch a little on that issue of security as well, just as Gloria has done. You run a school, you run a children academy, and I mean, you would know these things and the challenges when it comes to security. What do you think the government can do to to tackle the issue of insecurity?
Yes, just like Gloria said, if we're going to be bringing the children together out of their homes.
Gloria, sorry, Gloria, just hold on a bit. Mary, go ahead.
Okay.
We need to, assure their parents they are going to be safe by putting systems in place and provide security for the children from home to school, from school back home. And even the premises we're going to be, just like we are not talking about the conventional way of bringing children either under a mango tree or under any means, but bring them together, ensure provision of security. They come, they live. Even if it's not boarding, they should be able to have security to school and security back home. And then in the premises they're going to be using, let there be security. I believe these people that create this mayhem want to discourage modern education. So we should be intentional about the security we put in place whenever we're going to be bringing children together. Of course, without security, children cannot learn. They can't be assured, they don't have peace of mind to be able to learn. So government should be able to provide adequate security from home to school and school back home. And if we're really not paying lip service to this cost of out-of-school children, we need to do much more to ensure that these children are back to school. Just like Gloria said, motivation is key, and then provision of adequate security, and then give it time to see the outcome. Over time, maybe we'll be able to reach more children. We'll take it a step at a time. To reach over 10 million out-of-school children, maybe in a year will be a feat, but we can take it gradually and have templates, have areas we have conquered successfully. We'll keep moving out and then get all the children back to school. I believe it's doable.
Thank you for that. Now, Gloria, you wanted to say something. I don't know if Mary clarified it or you still want to go ahead.
Security is a very paramount reason, and for this children to come out. You know, their parents are very scared. They are scared to release their children because of this insecurity everywhere, especially in the north where I am. We know it. But like what the last speaker said, is for the government to provide adequate security. Like all the things we saw in the Chibok school, all those schools that they adopted the children, is because there is no nearby police posts. Government needs to mount police posts near the schools so that these parents will be assured of the security of their children. Mount police posts, army posts. Defense could be anywhere. The way defense is guarding our pipelines and properties, we should get defense. Some of them should be mapped out to be guiding the schools. Go to schools anywhere there is secondary school, anywhere there's primary school. You share these personnel of defense.
Okay, Gloria, thank you so much for that point. It's actually very salient. Thank you for that. And I would like to take this opportunity to say thank you, Mary Lotachukwu Ohagwasi, the CEO of Gamseed Children Academy, Ghajiga, Lagos, and also to you, Gloria Chikodi, the lecturer, FCT Abuja. And thanks in absentia to Gideon Simon Ghajiga as well. Thanks for making this session an insightful and interesting one. Thank you for joining me. And let's not forget that, the plan is to bring back at least 10.5 million children, out of school children. But we're not talking about the teachers and the lecturers making living better for them and, providing them better living conditions, and of course payment of salaries. Now, there's a plan underway currently where teachers are currently trying to go on strike because of unpaid 25-month salaries. That should also be put into consideration. You're watching Village Square Africa, and when we come back, we go into another discourse in the African continent. Stay with us.